Welcome to the Empathy Avengers podcast, where we put empathy into action.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Empathy Avengers podcast.
Today, we're excited to bring Mark Kerr with us. He is my friend's husband, and we've been chatting about politics all summer at the pool parties. And Mark is an interesting fellow. He is an ex-right-leaning independent, but now more or less on our side and helping to fight and champion democracy. So welcome, Mark, to the Empathy Avengers podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here with us, Mark.
Anxious to share.
Tell us a little bit more. I barely scratched the surface on your background. Tell us about your interesting upbringing and what brings you to the left side of things now with your worldview.
I was born with fairly solid left-leaning parents. My dad was a union carpenter. My mom was a nurse. I was not raised with any particular preconceptions about politics, so that when I attained voting age, I registered as an independent. My voting behavior, thinking that I was voting my conscience, did lead me to vote Republican through most of my first 25 years of voting. I loved that Ronald Reagan defeated the Soviet Union, which was a boogeyman from my childhood. But as we got into the Bush years, I began to realize I might not really be a right leaner after all. I voted for Ross Perot. I was initially appalled because we got Bill Clinton, and I was a little right leaning enough to be venting the Rush Limbaugh propaganda. But in hindsight, Bill Clinton turned out to be a pretty good president as a businessman goes. Personally, maybe not so much, but realized that the left was just a bunch of people who happened to share different viewpoints. And I realized that I needed to at least be open-minded to crossing over for real. Second term Obama, I realized I could not vote Republican at that time, and really have not looked back since. The more I research, the more I realize that I am too empathetic, sympathetic to human beings to be a good Republican these days. And I do believe in America and that we are the greatest country on earth still, and that in general we can do better than most countries, and we should do better than most countries. Sadly, we're not there at the moment, but perhaps in another year we will be.
I hope, from your lips, man, we've got to turn this around for sure. I hope it only takes a year, but I'm doubtful. I'm a little more skeptical about that. But tell us a little bit more. So you listened to Rush Limbaugh, right? But you made it very clear to both Minnie and I that you are not a ditto head. Can you speak a little bit?
Negative. At the time, he was very supportive of Reagan, and he didn't seem crazy to me. He just seemed enthusiastic. It's only as I started to listen to both sides more that I realized he was pretty biased, and that I really didn't like his attack dog style. I ceased listening to him decades ago, but during my early days, I was a fan for a while. Not that I went crazy with the ditto head thing, though.
I think it's really interesting, how you said crossing over for real. I spent 15 years in a mega church in Texas on the same side that you were on, and it's easy to get wrapped up in the brainwashing of it. A big part of that is people like Rush Limbaugh and Charlie Kirk and others who are making a huge amount of money off of stoking hate.
For those people that have that sort of influence to deliberately lie over and over and over, it's disgraceful. And I never imagined that we in America would be here where we are today, where the parties are not adversaries, they're enemies now. And I hate being here. I pray that we all get back to where we can just have differences of opinions without hating each other. So, yeah, it's a strange place we are in history right now.
They really are treating us like the enemy. We just practically have been declared war upon by the Trump administration. He's invading blue cities. He's called Antifa a terrorist organization. So think about that. So somebody who identifies as anti-fascist, he's calling a terrorist organization. Like, what? So yeah, we're in upside down world. I don't know how we're going to get out of it, but I'm hopeful that there's people like you who you did turn. It sounds like you saw the light before this Trump disaster happened. So you already kind of were becoming more left leaning, you said during Obama.
Yes, but when Hillary ran, when Bill Clinton was elected, I was not a Hillary fan. I was just off the sting of my vote not counting by wasting it on Ross Perot. And I thought Ross would have made a good president, but in the intervening 20 years, Hillary went on to a very reputable and honorable service. And by the time she was promoted to be the Democratic candidate, I thought she was well proven, and I enthusiastically supported her running for president. I feel like we'd certainly be in a much better place today had she won. My political growth has been an experience in deciding that everything I thought I believed wasn't true. I've already discarded all of my beliefs once. I think I'm on the right side of this, the correct side of this thing now.
Yes, the left side of this.
We can do better. And that seems to be far more of a theme from the left than the right. I want to get back to where I consider Republicans just people I know, not potential enemies.
Yeah. So you and I have talked a little bit about how we can get involved more. We're both in California, and sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, since you've had a little more circuitous going from right to left or independent, whatever, and where you're swinging left nowadays. But I've pretty much mostly been always left, and I sometimes feel like my vote doesn't count as much because I can't really sway an election one way or the other because I happen to live in a very blue bubble here in Los Angeles. How do you feel about our ability to affect change here in California?
One of the best things I've researched recently, and I have not acted on it in any meaningful way yet, was participating in the ground level Democratic clubs where you start promoting more progressive people to run for office and progress into Congress to try to start curbing this old old school white man as a congressman standard and actually embrace younger people who are hopefully a little more socially conscious than what seems to be the standard in the American Congress now. I mean, that even includes Democrats. Most of them are not doing what they should be doing to fight this thing either, in my opinion, but I'm in a kind of a bubble too, so it's hard to say. I pray they're out there fighting and kicking and screaming, but I don't see much of it.
We do have another opportunity here in California to affect change. Do you know much about that, Prop 50?
Yes, and I totally approve of Gavin Newsom's doing this through a special election. I think it would have been righteous to go ahead and ram it through in the dead of night like Texas did, but no, he's taken the high road and he's leaving that to the California voters, which I feel confident will overwhelmingly pass. But yeah, it's something we have to do, and we have to set a standard for other blue states to follow. We're wrestling pigs here. We got to get in there and get muddy. And if we don't start getting muddy, we can't compete. So I pray that we will see followers in the whole blue state thing jumping on board with this redistricting. And it's sad that we're there, but we are there.
Yeah. And just to explain a little bit more to our listeners, especially those who are not in California, but if you know anybody in California, get them to vote yes on Prop 50 on November 4th is our special election. So basically what this is, it's our response to what Texas is doing and now Missouri and a few other states. But it was really Texas first. The president called Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and said, "Hey, buddy, I need a few more red congresspeople. So can you redraw the maps in Texas in the middle of the cycle? We're not supposed to redraw the redistricting maps until after the census, which happens at the 0 years. So we wouldn't have another census until 2030. And so therefore the maps should not be redrawn until 2031. But Governor Greg Abbott is going to basically kiss the ring of Trump so that they can get, I think they're going to potentially get 5 more red leaning districts by carving out like all the black people who live in San Antonio and all the black people who live in Austin and jamming them together in one district and then essentially disenfranchising their vote and their voice in favor of the red areas, the more rural areas. And it's cheating. So I don't normally support that. But in California, we're going to do the same thing so that we can counterbalance and shift the balance back and basically erase what Governor Abbott is doing in Texas. We're going to be able to get 5 blue leaning seats here in California by doing this same mid cycle redistricting, which normally I wouldn't agree with, but I do in this case because we got to fight fire with fire. We can no longer bring knives to gunfights, and Governor Gavin Newsom has been really thinking outside the box on ways that we can save our democracy. I feel very empowered as a Californian that I'll be able to help.
And I feel too that the strong arm tactic of Trump calling up Abbott, there's precedent, right? After the last election, he called up Georgia and told them, hey, find me 11,780 votes. It's the same shit, just a different day.
It makes it frightening that so much of the GOP rank and file seems to have lost respect for the law. They are willing to do anything the dear leader says, and with mixed degrees of success, he's getting away with it. The Supreme Court being packed as it was so masterfully, he's getting judgments in his favor frequently that would never have flown before. They have stuck up at some point for the rule of law, but they continue to be a giant concern for me because we know they're our last ditch defense because everything the Donald touches has to end at the Supreme Court. And if they're just going to rubber stamp what he says, then we're in more trouble than I hope.
Yeah. That was really fascinating. You shared this article from Tom Hartman, and we will link to the article in the show notes. His theory was essentially that the Democrats, the progressive Democrats, should do more of what the Tea Party did to kind of infiltrate the GOP.
That was pretty enlightening. It showed a frightening amount of long term planning that I didn't know political parties actually thought that way. But it worked, and they swung American politics in a nasty direction over 10 years. It took them to lay that groundwork. But it makes a lot of sense. Start at the bottom, push up candidates that are more in touch with what the average person believes, and just try to take it back. The only concern now is as long as we get to keep having elections, which get a little scary with the meeting with the generals yesterday, which I feel hopeful that may be a turning point away from Donald Trump. I believe most of those guys believe in the Constitution and their part in American democracy. And I don't really believe they're just going to march out the troops and declare war on us because Donald says so. I think we're more likely to have a coup, which I would never dream would be possible here, but I'm at the point where I'd welcome it.
You mean like a military coup?
I think that's about the only place it could come from.
Yeah.
As long as Donald has the reins of power for the federal agencies, the only thing that has the budget and the power to stand up to it is the U.S. Army and the Navy.
Yeah, it could get kind of sticky. I'm not a military person, so I don't really know what that would even look like. It's kind of hard to imagine right now.
It could be very ugly, and we all pray that we don't go there. My hope is if we can make it through the midterms, I'm more and more hopeful that things are going to be okay. It seems like there is a shift towards sense, towards a little reason happening, and I hope that's not me wearing my rose colored glasses. I believe it to be true. I think there is a general awakening from the people that have reflexively voted Republican. They're starting to see it at the grocery store and see that everything they were promised is kind of on hold. It's sad that that's how we have to get to this breakthrough, but I think that's what it's going to take is they're going to have to see that they have to buy food or pay the mortgage this month, and that used to be no problem. And
Yeah.
that's the point where they will start realizing, okay, this is not what we signed up for.
Friend of ours
We should-
was sharing with us yesterday. She got her Medicare information for next year, and it went from $9 up to $59, which is like a 500% increase, right? So it's not just egg prices or gas prices, it's also basic human health care.
Well, definitely. And I'm sitting here watching what's going on or not going on Capitol Hill because we're currently shut down. And what the sticking point is about the healthcare subsidies, tax credits. And I am a proud recipient of Obamacare and I get those tax subsidies. Stand to have potentially a 500% increase in my monthly payment for healthcare. I mean, that's already baked in because of the big, beautiful, ugly ass motherfucking bill. And so this is where the Democrats, their final last stand is to try to protect those subsidies for people like me and so many others. And I think Medicaid as well is on the table. And they're just not playing ball because the Republicans want to shut the government down. They don't like our government anyway. They want to destroy it. So they're thrilled to have the government shut down and try to blame the Democrats, but it's obviously their fault. We'll have to see the fallout, whatever happens.
I'm concerned because it affects me directly, but it's me and millions of other people who are
Yeah.
over the age of 65. I made a living my whole life. In 45 years of work, I figure I did pretty well. I made a good living, but I always paid my taxes and was part of the Social Security system. When you suddenly realize that you're retirement age and your only real income source is Social Security, well, it's okay. I mean, we could survive on Social Security, but it's been a target for the GOP for a decade and a half now. I remember Paul Ryan ranting and raving about the entitlements. It's like, no, 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 you're mispronouncing paid benefits.
Exactly.
You didn't give us a choice. You forced this on us, and now you say you don't want to pay it back. And they're not taking us towards being more European with national
No.
health care. They're taking us backwards. Oh, peasants don't need health care. You're supposed to live fast and die young. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just seniors. I was disabled for many, many years and relied upon disability, and it does scare me. I mean, obviously now I'm able to work. I worked my way out of disability, so it doesn't affect me anymore, but I do worry about that community a lot. It's concerning.
America can afford that. If the
Yeah,
will of the American people were real, we wouldn't be having this discussion. This has been manipulated for decades, and we're just at the pointy end of this whole discussion where it's either going to fly in the next year and we're going to get stripped of everything, or it'll be overturned. I just pray that's on the overturned side, not stripped of everything. I don't know what I would do. I can still earn money, I still work, and I like working, but I didn't plan to work out of necessity until I died, which I'm grateful that I can. But no, I want my Social Security.
that was the breakthrough
And
for
I really,
me. Was a friend of mine was like, "You've been working since you were 15. You've been paying into that system just in case you did get sick." Finally, I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. Okay." And then the stigma was taken off of me.
America can be kind to people
Hmm.
that life has dealt a short hand to. And that seems to be a point of contempt for anything from the right. Oh, those dirty peasants, they should have worked harder and been rich like me. No compassion. Just,
No
we can do better.
empathy. No empathy, which is
Yes.
why
Oh
And
God.
we are the Empathy Avengers. We are bringing it back. Justin Timberlake brought sexy back about a decade ago, but we're bringing empathy back.
let's hope we're not too late.
It's crazy how fast it seems to have been stigmatized in a bad way. It seems like a basic, fundamental, good part of humanity. It's a bit mind boggling. We're going to be continuing until we don't have to anymore.
Exactly.
But speaking of the people and our voices and standing up, we have another big protest coming up and the No Kings 2.0, I guess.
Hmm.
And we've had a lot of protests over the last 9 months, 10 months. But I think that the No Kings 1.0 seems to have been the best turnout from what I have seen, and that was way back in April.
Oh
So I
wow.
hope we get as much of a turnout here and it'll be October 18th all over the country. And I think different organizations are getting their act together, which was one of the reasons what made that one so successful.
Hmm.
It was 50-51. the No Kings movement, Move
Indivisible.
On. We're all trying to get more organized now. So I think that'll be a good one. I'm actually going to be in a red state. I happen to be traveling to New Orleans for vacation, and I've convinced my family to do the march with me
I
on that
love
Saturday
that.
afternoon
What a great
in New
way to
Orleans.
spend the weekend.
That's cool.
Protesting in
So,
Mike Johnson's home state. How much do I love that?
I doubt he'll be there, but yeah, maybe I'll make a sign about him. Especially if he is still holding up the confirmation of the newly elected Democratic Congresswoman from Arizona who is the deciding vote to actually have the Epstein files released. So we'll see where things are when I go there on October 18th.
Well, and for me, be in New York City on October 18th, and I'm really excited about that. Meeting our friend Eileen, another Empathy Avenger, and our dear friend Jen Senko from the brainwashing of my dad. So I can't wait to hug them and raise our voices together. It's going to be a huge crowd in New York City, so I'm so excited.
I'm excited to see photos from
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And Jen Senko's episode 2 of the Empathy Avengers podcast.
I can't believe it was all the way back in April. But we hit that 3.5% of the population, or 12 million, about, that they have told us is what is really needed for change, is that, 3.5% of the population needs to get out in the streets, make their voices heard, and protest this shit. Be Antifa.
Yeah.
There are people who don't care about what the people want, and there are people who do.
I did get passionate about reproductive rights back in 2022. And in a way, I now look back and go, wow, that was a little bit the canary in the coal mine, you could argue. We already knew Trump was bad. He had made the Supreme Court bad. That's what ultimately overturned Roe v. Wade. Now I realize that it's a fascist movement, killing reproductive rights and putting women back in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant is what they want.
Mhm.
This whole thing. And along with all the other things that they want to do to oppress men and LGBT and everybody else. So it's interesting how it's evolved. We still have reproductive rights to fix, but there's so much more to fix now. And it's a bit overwhelming.
The power of empathy scares them. That's why they want women out of the workplace, out of the world, and back in the kitchen. Our power scares them.
They're going to go
The
after our vote next.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The only voters they want are rich, white, conservative men. And they're working their way up the ladder. That was a good place to start with Roe v. Wade. You could cut out a giant swath of the voter pool. It amazes me that there is any such thing as blacks for Trump and Latinos for Trump. He's been so open about not really caring about them and trying to disenfranchise them.
So, Mark, I know when I left the cult, I lost my whole community. Can you tell me how your transformation from somebody who was a Rush Limbaugh fan, how did changing your mindset change your community?
That is an interesting question, and it's been a very bumpy road for me. Most of my male friends come from similar backgrounds to mine, middle class, Orange County, and we're all fairly conservative, but they are all intelligent enough to listen and think. I have found myself distancing myself from several long term friends because they were so wholeheartedly into Fox News and the right. And it was easy for me to recognize that they put us in a bad position as a nation and that it was not unreasonable of me to push back from them. My interesting most recent experience for affecting me directly personally was a long-term friend of mine locally here. We shall call him Mr. X, that I've been friends with for 6 years. We've got together Sunday mornings for pizza and coffee for any of the weekends that haven't involved working in the garden and doing chores. So he's been very helpful to me. But we started arguing seriously about right and left a couple of years ago. I told him that we could not talk about that. He was never going to convince me. I was never going to convince him. We just can't go there. I had my last Sunday with Mr. X 2 weeks ago, and he was very off of his normal self. And I pressed him repeatedly for what's wrong? What's up with you? And he refused to let anything out of the bag. Later in the day, at the end of a couple of texts that I told him I was at the hospital with my daughter, he texts me a link to a Sky News Australia rant. He has repeatedly denied getting his news from Fox News. And for those who don't know, Sky News Australia is Rupert Murdoch's version of Fox News Australia.
Mhm.
And the commentator that did this rant was so out there for name calling and just great vocabulary, but a fourth grader's attitude about having an intelligent discussion that I could not imagine why he would have sent that to me. But he followed this up with, I guess maybe I can't come up the hill anymore, meaning he can't come to visit me anymore because I haven't seen the light. I was relieved but shocked. I know darn well I'm one of his only male friends, and he discarded me over Fox News Australia, which is okay. I'm going to take yes for an answer because if you can't not talk politics, then we can't hang out. Thank you for making that easy for me. I'm not happy about it. I'm very torn about it. He's been a close friend for a long time, and I am sad to put him on the dormant friends list, praying that someday he might see the truth. That is my bits of direct personal impact by the thing, and I am not pleased with it because I have discarded people that I like and I still like, but I feel obligated to push away. We're on opposite sides of a non-shooting civil war here. That might sound harsh, but it's true.
It's very,
It
very
is true.
true.
I just pray that it doesn't come to shooting. That other side is far better armed than we of the peace and empathy side are. It's
Well, kill
frightening.
them with kindness. Come on.
I
You
have a
got to,
hard
but
time believing that most of these right wingers who own a lot of guns, I have a hard time they're ready to turn it on their neighbors because we didn't vote the right way. I still struggle with thinking we're all doomed. I still believe that human decency is alive and well, and it can't get to that. It can't get to firing squads and executions over politics.
Yeah.
It
Well,
can't.
I think Mr. X might still have a place in your heart and become a non-dormant friend again, because as we've already talked about, the tide maybe is shifting, or at least maybe we're hopeful that it will eventually shift. And as Mindy has already demonstrated, by her wokeness, for lack of a better word, it's possible to convert people from being in the cult, in the brainwashing mode, in the gaslighting, in the Darvo situation, to having them see the light. I do think that there's a lot of smart people who are just being lied to and have been completely bamboozled by this media disinformation campaign from the right. Mindy, what do you think?
I do think we're seeing cracks that we can exploit. But for those of us with empathy, it is hard. It is painful. You know, like you were just talking about, Mark, with Mr. X. What affected you? That was somebody torn from your heart. With a lot of patience and perseverance, it is possible to get them out. Following Dr. Hassan's freedomofmind.org and the bite model, that was a game changer. Jim Stewartson was a game changer for me. Just getting those factual nuggets of information going in my brain again felt like waking up from a coma or a really bad dream that you couldn't fight your way out of. It's painful. It's a tornado of pain that you are constantly in, and they keep them in that position for a reason. They can control them better that way.
We've talked about cognitive dissonance, right, Mindy?
It,
The people who are in the cult feel pain or cognitive dissonance when they're trying to question what is going
Mhm.
on and they have conflicting information. And that's how you start to wake up because you're like, wait a minute, this is not right.
Right.
And in a way, I would argue that I'm feeling cognitive dissonance.
Mhm.
I've never changed my position, but I feel like I've woken up to the reality of what's going on. I'm frustrated that even my Democratic friends and family are just like, doo doo doo, going about their day, not realizing that we're in a fascist situation. Maybe they don't like it. They're like, oh, well, I'll vote blue in 2026. But what if we don't have an election? What if shit is getting crazier? And so I'm maybe more chicken little over here and a little maybe more paranoid than the rest of my friends and family because I believe I'm more informed about what's actually happening on the ground.
You are.
I loved being comfortable that everything's okay, that whether I vote Republican or whether I vote Democratic this time won't really affect the world that much. But at some point, you do have to recognize that we're at a place today that is unprecedented. We're so polarized, but there's still millions out there who are pretty much like Mark at 18, kind of half head in the sand. I don't really want to know who those senators on the news clip are. And I start realizing, wow, I know a lot of those senators, especially the right wingers. I never wanted to know this. But it wasn't that difficult to see what was happening. And that's what makes the whole thing a bit more frightening is can't the average person that I know, people that I know specifically are intelligent enough to have more involvement and to see that things aren't the same and they refuse to. That's what scares me.
And I think too, that's again the cult manipulation. I found that cult control interrupts or suspends our critical thinking skills. So even though I knew some incredibly bright people in the church in Texas, they made dumb choices because their critical thinking skills were not working.
That has been one of my wife's favorite talking points. They don't encourage that in school anymore either. It's becoming more and more, and I hate to go with generalities here, but it's becoming more and more a indoctrination camp than a place to learn about the world. And that becomes frightening. I'm a big fan of history, and it sounds like they're setting us up for our own little Trump youth organization.
I would argue the Point USA is a Hitler Youth organization.
I pray that those generals and admirals that were paraded out the other day are wrestling with their conscience today about their obligation to America and the Constitution versus their obligation to Trump and the GOP. I feel fairly confident that those people, having been in service for their whole lives, will come down on the correct side of this equation. But even at that, it's not a good answer. Even if they're all on the same page, it's just one more bad possible outcome, a coup. That's not a winner either. If we can make it till the midterms, I think we'll be okay.
I hope so.
Little more than a year do between now and then, like we talked about Prop 50. Even though I'm in Connecticut, I encourage everybody across the country to start talking about it. We have the October 18th protest, like we mentioned. Go to kings.org and you can find a protest close to you. But don't stop. What they want is for us to be silenced, and we're not going to be silenced.
What's very difficult, they've had such a nonstop barrage of appalling stuff that it's hard not to get numb to it. It's hard to stay
It is.
feeling like you have to do something. But that's what they're counting on is just burning people out where they just roll over and go, ah, don't kill me. Okay, I give up.
Timothy Snyder says, do not comply in advance. We can't lay down and just say, don't hurt me.
Yeah. And I would say to the idea that we get tired because we're bombarded, I totally agree. But there are more of us than them. And each one of us, every single person who's pro democracy, can do something. You can just talk to your neighbors. You can go to the protests. You can call your congresspeople and try to get the government turned back on again. The more crap that they throw at us, the more opportunity there is for us to chip away at it. And if there's more of us than them, eventually we can rise up and stop them. I was really empowered by that whole Jimmy Kimmel debacle
Mhm.
because people spoke up and Disney caved. They shouldn't have made the decision in the first place to obey in advance, but they did cave and they even pushed the Next Star Sinclair stations to put him back on. So at least for now, we won that battle, and hopefully that will make other people think twice when they are going to be okay with this dismantling of free speech, and they won't let that happen.
Once again, I hate to go with absolutes, but as long as that CEO is at Disney, I will never go to Disneyland. I will never subscribe to Disney Plus. I canceled my subscription to Disney Plus happily because like he rolled over way too easy.
Yeah.
You're giving up on everything except money.
I'm not going to go
Uh,
back to my paid subscription, but I am watching ABC shows, which I had boycotted for a week. I like The View and I like General Hospital.
where you can push back and where you can't push back on everything.
I actually gave up General Hospital for a few days, but then I put it back.
That itself
Uh,
is a sacrifice, and I'm very proud of you for that.
Thank you for that. See, we all can do something. For all the people fighting back, maybe you're just doing one thing today and you have to take tomorrow off. But that's okay. We're all still in this fight. I like it. The analogy of the chorus or the choir singing, and you can't sing the note forever, but the really long notes, you can hold it, and then maybe you have to take a breath, but somebody else is carrying that note for you, and then you come back in and have to take a breath. And with all of us, we all can still breathe and still fight back and fight fascism and put our own oxygen mask on and then help those that we need to and bring empathy everywhere we go every day. So
That's a good
hopeful.
one. And I think as long as we all keep in mind that we need to try and contribute a little something, it helps keeps me motivated if I do something. And if that's my chatting with you today, that's a great thing. I do need to get on some meaningful stuff, get back to that Democratic club and find out how to really get involved. But yeah, it's time. And even if not so much for myself and my generation, I don't want my kids inheriting this mess if I can possibly help avoid it.
Yep. I am not leaving the country like this for my son. I refuse.
It's all downhill from here if we don't stop it.
We're going to do this. We're going to be able to fight this. It might not be today, tomorrow, next week, but I do feel confident that the good guys will prevail in the end.
Let's continue to pray for it.
And work for
Definitely.
it and speak out for it like we are right now. Mark, you said joining us is one step in just talking about it, and we really appreciate you being here and having this conversation today.
Thanks. I'm glad.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for joining us for the Empathy Avengers podcast, where kindness is your superpower and empathy saves the day.
The Empathy Avengers, where we put empathy into action.